Today, we're diving deep into the rulebook for all mining in South Africa. And as you're about to see, this isn't just about geology or engineering. Nope, it's a blueprint for a nation's future, and it's one that's deeply, deeply rooted in its past.
Right at the very heart of the law this rulebook supports, you find this powerful phrase, right away, that tells you this isn't just some dry technical document. It's a framework with a massive historical purpose written directly into its DNA.
So you see, this is way more than just a set of regulations. It's really a story of transformation. It's about how South Africa is trying to take an industry that was, for a long time, built on exclusion and completely reshape it to serve everyone. Okay, so here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll look at the why, what sparked these new rules. Then we'll get into the rule book itself. We'll walk the path of what it actually takes to get a mining right. Then we'll explore the massive commitments to people and the planet. And finally, we'll see the incredible balancing act this whole thing requires. So let's start with this new era for mining. See, to really get these regulations, you have to understand the history behind them. There was this fundamental drive to change who owns, who manages, and, most importantly, who benefits from the country's incredible mineral wealth.
So how do you even begin to legislate a change that big? Well, you create a seriously comprehensive rulebook. So let's take a look at the actual structure of the regulations that are meant to put this new era into practice.
The foundation for all of this is something called the Mineral and Petroleum Resources Development Act, or MPRDA for short, from back in 2002. You can kind of think of this as the constitution for all the country's natural resources. And the regulations we're digging into today, they're the detailed instructions that make this whole act actually work.
And when you look at the structure, you see just how thorough it is. Chapter 2 is really the heart of it. That's where you find the economic, social, and environmental pillars we're going to focus on. But look, it also covers everything from how to appeal a decision to managing the transition from the old system. It's the whole shebang. All right, let's get into that first pillar, the path to actually mining. How does a company even get the right to look for minerals, let alone start digging them up under these new rules?
Well, just getting permission to even look, what's called a prospecting right, is a whole journey in itself. You don't just fill out a form. You have to prove you've got the technical skills and the financial muscle to do the job. You also have to submit a super detailed work plan, and, this is crucial, you have to start a public consultation process with anyone who might be affected.
And listen, if you think prospecting sounds tough, applying for a full-on mining right is on a whole other level. The rules make it crystal clear. You need exhaustive, detailed plans for every single part of the operation, from your financial forecast right down your social commitments, which actually brings us to our next pillars.
And this is where we get to the real heart of the transformation, people and the planet. The regulations are emphatic that mining is not just an economic activity. No way. It comes with huge, non-negotiable social and environmental responsibilities.
These responsibilities are basically structured as two major parallel commitments. Every single applicant has to submit a detailed plan for the people, that's the communities and the workers, and a totally separate but just as detailed plan for the planet, the land itself.
Let's start with the Social and Labor Plan, or SLP. The whole point of this document is to make sure that mining operations actually contribute in a real way to the development of their local areas and help transform the industry from the inside out.
And we're not talking about vague promises here. The rules demand concrete, actionable plans. They have to cover everything from employee skills training and creating local business projects to improving housing and even having a plan for how to manage downsizing responsibly. It's basically a comprehensive social contract.
Now, let's flip to that other pillar, the planet. The Environmental Management Program, or EMP, isn't just some report you file once and forget about. The law sees it as a cradle-to-grave commitment. You are responsible for managing the mine's environmental impact from the very first day of planning to long, long after it has closed down.
This timeline really shows you just how rigorous that commitment is. It starts before a single shovel hits the ground, with a report just scoping out potential issues. That then leads to a full environmental impact assessment, a super deep dive into every possible consequence. Once the mine is up and running, it has to follow its plan and submit to regular audits. And it all leads up to applying for a closure certificate, which is only granted once the land is properly rehabilitated. It is a complete life cycle approach.
So, we've got the economic drive, we've got the social contract, and we've got the environmental commitment. So for our final section, let's look at how these regulations try to weave all of that together into one, well, very delicate balancing act.
You know, the whole point of the MPRDA and all these rules is to manage this exact tension. How do you encourage economic investment while at the same time making sure communities actually benefit and that the environment is protected? It's a constant negotiation between these three vital and, let's be honest, sometimes competing interests.
And just to make this a little more real, take a look at these non-refundable fees just to lodge an application. Now, the real costs are in the millions you'd spend on the plans and the assessments, but these fees, they mark the very first symbolic step in what is a long, complex, and incredibly regulated journey. And in the end, it all comes back to this. 3 pillars. For a mine to operate legally and sustainably in South Africa, it can't just be profitable. It also has to be socially responsible and environmentally sound. If one of those pillars starts to crumble, the whole structure is at risk of falling down. So, as we wrap this up, it's pretty clear these regulations are way more than just bureaucratic red tape. They really represent this ambitious, comprehensive roadmap that's designed to steer one of the country's most important industries toward a more equitable and sustainable future.
But you know, this ambition leaves us with one last, really crucial question. Because having a detailed map is one thing, but successfully navigating the actual terrain, that's something else entirely. The real challenge isn't just writing the rules, it's enforcing them. So how does a nation ensure that this delicate balance between prosperity, people, and the planet is ever truly achieved on the ground?